I think that what we're experiencing now is just the tip of a huge inflation iceberg. Productivity numbers are collapsing.
Welcome back to Yanasa TV's As A Man Thinketh. Today, we're with Peter Schiff. Peter is the CEO of Euro Pacific Capital. He runs a podcast known as The Peter Schiff Show, and he was an economic advisor to Ron Paul's presidential campaign in 2008. He's become a voice of reason in our current economic environment of massive speculation and inflation. When we're looking at all of these numbers and we're looking at the inflation, is this a supply chain issue, or is this being caused by just the simple fact that we're throwing so much money into the economy? We just passed that $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill, and I think they're trying to pass the $1.7 trillion bill. Are these bills and the amount of money that has already gone into the economy, is that reflective of inflation right now, or do you think it's actually the inflation hasn't even caught up to the amount of money that's been put out there?
Well, I think we have a long way to go when it comes to catching up. I think that what we're experiencing now is just the tip of a huge inflation iceberg. So the majority of the price increases are yet to come. But we are dealing with the beginning of this process where we're going to pay the piper for years and years of excess money printing, not just all the excess money that we're printing now or last year, but we've been doing it for many, many years. You know, I don't think it's a function of supply. Everybody wants to blame it on these bottlenecks or shortages, but you can always claim that there's a supply shortage when you print too much money, because whenever you just give people money, obviously they're going to go out and try to spend it. But if people aren't producing goods and services, there's nothing to buy with the money. And so by definition, there'll be a shortage of supply. But real demand is supposed to come from supply. It's the production of goods and services that leads to genuine demand. But if the government just prints a bunch of money and gives it to people who aren't even working, who aren't producing anything, and now they go out and try to buy stuff, even though they contributed nothing to producing stuff, well, obviously there's not going to be enough stuff. And they can always say, well, it's because of inadequate supply, but the reality is it's excessive demand that is being created by the money printing. In fact, if you look at our trade deficits, they're all-time record highs. We are importing more goods into this country than ever before. So we have more stuff. The problem is we have even more money to buy it.
You're talking about productivity in the economy. We had the recent unemployment numbers come out, and they adjusted the previous months way up from where they were, but the workforce was still at about 60%.
Well, you know, the productivity numbers are collapsing. We've had big increases in labor costs, and therefore productivity has really collapsed. And productivity is the only real way to get higher wages in real terms, because workers can only be paid to the extent that they're productive, because their own productivity has to support their wages. But if you're getting collapsing productivity, then real wages are going to go down. And that's exactly what's happening, because even though nominal wages are rising, the cost of living is rising even faster. So Americans are being paid more, but they're actually earning less, because when they take their paychecks to the grocery store, they can't buy as much food. You know, when they take those larger paychecks to the gas station, they don't get as much gas, right? So it doesn't matter what you're paid. What matters is what you can buy with what you're paid. And Americans are falling further and further behind. And those bad productivity numbers are a sign of more to come. And these record trade deficits, they're a huge problem, because we're not producing the products domestically, because a lot of Americans aren't working, and many of them that aren't producing goods. They're in service-related jobs that don't produce goods, and therefore we rely on the rest of the world to produce the goods that we don't, and that reveals an increasingly weak U.S. economy that cannot produce the goods that it consumes.
Would inflation just keep pushing the market up, or do you think that there's going to be a market correction? I mean, our productivity is way down, that the money can't possibly be real in the marketplace at some point.
It's inevitable that we're going to have a correction and even a bear market. I mean, it's, they haven't stopped coming. But the government's going to keep printing money. And if they print enough, nominal bear markets may not occur. But real bear markets, if you want to measure the value of US stocks, let's say in gold, I think we could see a substantial collapse in real values, even if nominal values keep going up, because you're measuring your stocks in dollars. And if the dollar is losing value, then it looks like stocks are gaining value. It's like if I were to give you a ruler and I made a ruler and it only had 6 inches, and I said, here's a foot, and it was 6 inches long, and I asked you to measure your height. Well, if you're 6 feet tall, you measure yourself with that little ruler, and now you're 12 feet tall. Well, that doesn't mean you've grown, just because I've given you a tiny ruler to measure your height. So if the Dow Jones goes way up in dollars, but that dollar has lost a lot of its value, then what difference does it make that the stock market has a bigger number, right? I mean, it's no different than you being 12 feet tall, with a 6-inch ruler. And it doesn't mean that you can slam dunk the basketball just because this ruler says you're 12 feet tall. You got to look at what's happened to the ruler. So you got to look at what's happening to your dollars when you're trying to figure out what your stock portfolio is worth. And, they're just going to keep on printing dollars in order to prop everything up, in order to finance government spending, in order to keep the stock market from crashing, the real estate market from crashing, the bond market from crashing. They just keep on printing money. But then it's the money that crashes. And even though your stock portfolio hasn't gone down in value, you're a lot poorer because you can't buy as much with the proceeds when you sell your stocks, or the dividends that your stocks are paying. If they're even paying any dividends, those dividends won't go nearly as far, at the supermarket or, the gas station.
I appreciate you coming on and chatting with some of our viewers, and hopefully they'll go and check out your podcast. I know you always put out some great information on all the market reports. So if there's more information that people would like to hear, hopefully they check you out.
Yeah, I do 2 or 3 podcasts a week. Schiffradio.com is my website. It's also on my YouTube channel. But anywhere, iTunes, Stitcher, any of these various platforms that have podcasts, chances are you could find my podcast on there. So make a habit of listening. Tell your friends to listen, because most of the mainstream coverage of the economy is completely wrong. It's really biased and trying to perpetuate these myths about government and capitalism. And, so if you want to know what's actually happening and why, my podcast is a good way to do that. I talk politics, talk economics, I talk the markets. And then more importantly, too, if you want to protect yourself, not just educate yourself and help to educate others, but really protect yourself from this coming dollar crisis and try to minimize the impact that it has on you personally. Right? I said inflation is a tax. Well, you can avoid the tax by avoiding what's being taxed, which is US dollars and US dollar denominated investments. So I have a brokerage firm and asset management company where I'm working with clients to try to build portfolios that will not only preserve their wealth during this period, but actually enhance it. There are people that are going to profit as a result of what's going to happen. I mean, a lot of people are going to suffer, but there will be winners, right? There's always winners and losers. And since you have the choice, we're going to lose as Americans. Everybody is going to lose as an American, but we could still win as an investor, And so, but in order to do that, you have to have the right portfolio that factors in the end game and what's going to happen in the long run. Forget about all the noise right now during the bubble. It's what's there when the bubble pops, right? It's like they say, when the tide goes out, we know who's swimming naked, right? What I'm doing is making sure that my clients, got a suit on and, they're ready for the tide to come out. And I can help you, create the right type of globally diversified portfolio that will hedge inflation and that will give you the type of income streams that you can reliably count on to help offset the rising cost of living. So people can, look me up at Europe Pacific Capital or my asset management company, Europe Pacific Funds. epacfunds.com. And also I mentioned gold and silver. Schiff Gold is the best place that I know to get the best prices on gold and silver. This is for physical delivery. You want to get gold and silver coins and bars shipped to your house, contact Schiff Gold to get it.